Charles Schwab, Jesus Christ, here we are. There we go.
We're giving out investment advice.
You guys
here
ready for
tonight.
investment advice? All right.
Oh, my God. Charles Robinson, Frank Schwab, I'm Jason Fitz. It's Inside Coverage. I've already called everybody the wrong name, and we're only, 11 seconds into the show. Gentlemen, Merry Christmas. I hope everybody had a happy holiday. I hope Santa brought you everything you could possibly want. What I wanted Santa to bring us was the Thursday night football game for the ages, one that we would never forget, something dramatic and wonderful that we could watch and talk about. And instead, we got Seattle beating Chicago 6-3. Lot to break down. C-Rob, happy holidays, my friend. Is Seattle any good? Like, here, I'm just going to be honest for a second. I feel like Frank and I, every Sunday night, we're like, Seattle good? Seattle stinks. Seattle good? Seattle stinks. Like, is Seattle any good?
Let me start that out like Chicago's offense. I'm going to punt that. All right. I'm moving straight to Chicago because I'm watching this game last night and I'm watching Caleb Williams. I don't think it was a particularly well-called game by the offensive staff. I thought Chicago's defense played admirably. It was sloppy conditions, wasn't great. But as I'm watching that game, the thing that I couldn't get over, I sat there and I thought, I remembered visiting the Broncos last offseason. I'm sitting with Sean Payton. We're talking about the whole Bo Nix process, all these different things. And as he's talking about evaluating quarterbacks coming in the league, he said to me, look, guys who take sacks in college take sacks in the NFL. Guys who hold the ball in college hold the ball in the NFL. Guys who hesitate to make plays and can't get it out hesitate to make plays and can't get it out on the NFL level. That's just how it goes. And unless you think you're a miracle worker and you can completely change a zebra's stripes, what a player is in college and how they play football, that's what they're going to be in the NFL, and that's how they're going to play football. I think now, watching that game last night, watching Caleb Williams, and again, I don't think it was particularly well called from offensive standpoint. We can get into the debacle in the last 2 minutes of the game and clock management once again, but I continue to see Caleb Williams hold the football rather than getting it out quickly. Now, there are offensive line problems at times. I don't blame this entirely on him. There was a Rome Odunze touchdown that gets taken off the board because of a holding call. Not everything's on him, but there continues to be this plague of Caleb just not getting the ball out quickly, making decisions quickly. And I feel like we're now at the end of the season, and I don't know how much that has really progressed. And I watch and I sit there and I think, okay, they're all into Ben Johnson, right? They want Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator. They're super hyped about this. Let me tell you something about Ben Johnson. He is all about rhythm, getting the ball out quickly, making your decisions, and let's go. Don't screw around. Don't continue plays. Let's not do all this off-schedule stuff. Let's have some confidence and let it go. That's what Jared Goff does. Boom, boom, boom. Snap. Goff knows what he's doing. He gets rid of the football. Occasionally, he will stretch plays. I swear that game last night, I'm watching it and I'm going, I think Ben Johnson might be a nightmare in this situation with Caleb Williams because he is nothing like how Jared Goff plays in Detroit, who absolutely suits Ben Johnson.
It sounds a lot like Kyle, right? Kyle Shanahan, who we all made fun of him for his infatuation with Kirk Cousins, but he wants a guy who, hey, this is the play, run the play. Get the ball out. This is your first read. This is your second read. If they're not there, third read, ball out. We get hypnotized. People get hypnotized by the splash play, right? Like Caleb Williams made a play yesterday on, I think it was third down to DJ Moore. That was like, wow, there aren't many dudes that can make that play, right? But that's not an NFL offense. It's great to make that once in a while. We see Mahomes do it here and there. But Mahomes can also run Andy Reid's offense. I don't know that Caleb Williams can run an offense right now. How many times yesterday, the Chicago Bears played football for 60 minutes. They have 4 legitimate stud targets in Odunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, even Cole Kmet, right? They ran 58 plays. They did not complete one on-schedule pass longer than 6 yards downfield.
6 yards, yep. It's great.
Unbelievable. And you think back to the season, really, Caleb Williams. The plays he has made are awesome highlights, right? Like, I dodged a rush for 14 seconds and I threw it all the way downfield. And that's great. And it's fun. And there is value, obviously, to that. But again, it's not an NFL offense. You think back to the whole season, he has not really run an NFL offense that well. Now, we can make the argument that the NFL offense they're running is trash. We can make the argument that the coaching staff is a absolute train wreck and you get somebody in there and maybe it changes, but I don't know, man. nobody wants to have this conversation because it's early. I get it. He's been in a terrible situation. I get it. But you look around at the other rookie quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels is light years ahead of Caleb Williams. Like, it's not even a conversation. Bo Nix has been better than Caleb Williams.
Frank,
you can make the argument Drake May has been better than Caleb
Michael
Williams.
Penix comes out in his first start. He throws an interception that wasn't even his fault. Kyle Pitts, right in his hands. Kyle Pitts.
A bunch of drops.
Botches it. Yeah, bunch. And there were, as you said, bunch of drops across the field. But immediately you watch, and leading into that game, I was talking to somebody in the Falcons organization. He was like, hey, man, he's like, our biggest problem in this change might be that we're going from a weak-armed righty to a strong-armed lefty. But it was clear people in that organization were hyped. They were amped. And the second I started watching that game, I'm like, oh, my God, I see the verticality already. I see exactly what Penix is bringing to the table. He is getting the ball out quickly. He's being decisive. I mean, it wasn't like it was a world-beating game, but you immediately were like, wow, I see what they're so excited about, how he can spin it, the fact that he can make decisions pretty quickly and put it on a guy downfield, by the way, put it on a guy, which is Caleb Williams has not had a lot of success accurately putting a ball downfield on guys. I can't blame it all on Caleb. And I don't want to pile on because it sounds like his rookie season has been an absolute abomination. It hasn't. But people are going to look at those raw numbers and go, well, geez, this rookie season's great. It's pretty good when you just look at the raw rookie numbers. Right. Well, he's not throwing interceptions because he's holding the ball and at times he's afraid to get rid of it. Or when he's throwing it downfield, he's missing guys by 2-3 yards. So whoever comes in there, they have a lot of work ahead of them.
And you know
it's got to be a really good fit.
It drives NFL. I kind of alluded to this, but whoever they hire, there's nothing that drives NFL coaches more nuts than a dude that doesn't run the play. And because you call stuff, you're like, this is going to be open. We're going to run this route combo against this defense. It's going to be open. There's your read. And then you watch and Caleb Williams just tucks the ball and's running around back there and everybody's freelancing. And it just drives you nuts as an NFL coach. Like, they want guys who can run their offense. And I don't know, like, there's no signs that Caleb could do this. Whoever comes in next, the challenge is for the coach to get Caleb Williams out of these habits that we all talked about before the draft. This is nothing new. Like,
fix the line. They got the offensive line.
They do have to. Look, this isn't all on Caleb, but it's somewhat on Caleb. Yes, they got to fix the line. That line is terrible. It's awful. But it's not all on Caleb, but it's some on Caleb too. Don't just, there are people out there, oh, Caleb's going to be awesome. Ben Johnson, of course he's going to want this job. Anybody will want the Chicago Bears job. I don't know about that.
Yeah. I think, Frank, to your point, we see these athletic plays from quarterbacks, and we think that's the standard. The standard is, can you make a play off schedule when you need to that will save a drive? Yes, that is absolutely part of it. But that's not the core. It has to be, I'm executing the offense, and I can also do this when I have to. And, when we go back to our draft coverage on the draft show we did at Yahoo, one thing that the only knock that I heard from anybody I talked to that's smart that covered the draft coming in on Caleb Williams was he makes these great plays at quarterback at the college level, incredible plays. But if you go back and watch the tape, there were easy throws in front of him. So the question was, why did he bypass the easy throw to make the difficult play? That was a real thing that a couple of different people said coming into it. I think we see that right now. Like, there's just this element of like, why is everything so difficult? And yes, the offensive line is a huge part of this. But Rob, to your point, I think they've got to get somebody in there that speaks Caleb Williams in a way that can break a bunch of tendencies that now, because the Bears didn't do the right thing, and frankly, in my opinion, destroy the entire front office, the organization, like get everybody out of the building and only put people in the building that speak Caleb Williams from the day he was drafted. They didn't do that. So now that he has a year reinforced of the bad habits that were part of the problem at USC. Like, I think this lays at Caleb Williams, but this lays largely at the feet of the Chicago Bears organization for not being preemptive about this.
Now, what you hope is, and this is, I think this is what a lot of Bears fans will grab onto, is that it's the Sean McVay, Jared Goff situation, right? And I remember that. I remember going into the Rams after they had hired Sean McVay, and I was sitting with Les Snead, the general manager, and I said, tell me when it was it for you, when you knew McVay was the guy. And he said, well, when McVay came out to interview out in LA, he said he's staying at the Courtyard, right? And he calls Jared Goff and he says, hey, this is before the interview. He says, hey, can we meet? So Goff comes, goes to the Courtyard, wherever they're at, goes to Sean McVay's room, and McVay has it set up to go through just this litany, layer after layer of plays with Jared Goff. So he starts going through literally all this minutia with Jared Goff saying, okay, this is what we can do better. Here's what we can do better. Let me ask you about this. And he's going through all this and he's dissecting everything. And Snead said that's exactly what Jared needed. He needed a guy who's going to sit down with him and go, okay, here are these mistakes we're making. Why are we doing this? Let's figure out exactly how to remedy this. He attacked it. But I think the difference between McVay and Jared Goff is that McVay's leadership qualities are different. I think he had been groomed for that head coaching position for a really long time. I don't know that's a 1-for-1 with Ben Johnson. I've said before, there are certain tendencies with Ben Johnson that make me feel like he is a great high-level offensive coordinator who I don't know what it's going to look like once he takes over an entire team. I brought up Adam Gase, and I mean that in a positive way because Adam Gase had some really good years as an offensive coordinator in the league. And then when he took over a head coaching spot, it was like, I don't know, this is a little awkward. And then, and again, I'll keep going back to this. It's all about style, right? His style with Jared Goff, Ben Johnson, is very much this rhythm game. There's a lot that's done off of play action. There are certain tenets of the offense that have to work in Chicago to be able to shift this over to Caleb Williams and again, make it work. You hope that Ben Johnson ultimately ends up being the tactician that Sean McVay is, the leader that Sean McVay is, because it wasn't like he just repaired the quarterback position. Sean McVay motivated the team. There are a number of different things that he brought to the table. You hope that that's what Ben Johnson is. Me personally, I think Sean McVay is a one of way. Like, I don't think you just go out there and there's you go in the fruit and vegetables aisle and you go to the Sean, McVay bin and you just pick yourself out one and there you go. You're good to go. I don't think that's how that's ultimately going to work. I would just say that the Bears need to be very careful about this hire. I think Ben Johnson needs to be very careful about where he goes as well. And I think this idea that Ben Johnson just wants that Bears job, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. There's going to be some selling, I think, maybe on both sides.
See, Rob, let me jump in real quick here. Isn't it possible, given the fact that, according to most reporting, the job was there for him for Washington, right? And he elected not to take it.
Right.
We're presuming that Ben Johnson is just going to take a job this year. Isn't it possible he looks around and is like, well, if the argument was he wouldn't take the Washington job because it just didn't feel right to him and the pieces weren't perfectly in place, I could look at all of the openings that we project are going to be there and say, well, if you don't have the right quarterback or the right GM or the right front office or the right structure, he's going to be in the same. This is not a football team that's about to hit salary cap hell and suddenly have to dump all their talent. Ben Johnson could just come back and be the offensive coordinator for the life. He's getting rich doing it. Like, it's not like he's not well compensated. You got one shot at your first job. If he didn't take Washington last year, I'm not willing to just stand here and say, well, it's a given he's going to take any of these jobs. If he doesn't love Caleb Williams, he shouldn't take that job. If he doesn't love one of the quarterbacks coming out in the draft this year, he shouldn't take a job of a team that we project is going to draft a quarterback. Like, he should be selective.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think Detroit, especially given the contracts that they've sunken into that offense, the band's staying together for a while on that offense, right? And so it's not like they're not going to be together in 2025. You risk health, though. You're like, okay, well, what happens if Penei Sewell, tears an ACL, right? What happens if, God forbid, Jared Goff, something happens to Jared Goff and he goes down for a length of time during the season? The longer you hold out, the more you start to get cute with what your opportunities really are. And I'm sure there are some people who are like, geez, looking back, I'll bet he probably would have loved that Washington situation now, given what they ultimately did. Although I don't know it would be the same success. I just don't know. There's a reason why Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury have worked so well in Washington with Jaden Daniels. I don't know that Ben Johnson can replicate that necessarily in Washington. I am for him being patient. And you're right, he was very patient last offseason. Let's wait and see what the availability is. You also speak a little bit to Chicago. The front office there with Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles, I don't think it's clean at all. And to me, that's problematic.
You think? Yeah.
I mean, we talked before about Vrabel, right? And I'm telling you, after we talked about that, you make calls and you're trying to figure out what the right fits are in certain situations. And it just kept going back to, there's certain elements of that job that should be attractive to Mike Vrabel. And Mike Vrabel should be attractive as a candidate inside that building. But given what the dynamics are that have really developed and surfaced in the last several months inside the Chicago Bears between Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, Does Kevin Warren, who is the team president and is leading this search, does he want a guy like Mike Vrabel who's going to come in and be the guy who's going to go, hey, wait, I want to be the power center of this organization, not the team president. Team president's not going to be the power center of a football team. Like, what the hell? Ben Johnson goes in there. Yeah, it's probably still the power center's the team president. So I think there's certain candidates. It's just weird. You're like, what's the right fit for Chicago? It's a different question, right? It's a different question for the quarterback. It's a different question for the front office. That's why this organization honestly is messy, because you have to go in terms of who. What's the right fit for the Chicago Bears? Well, in terms of who? Who are we talking about? What's the right fit for Kevin Warren, who wants to run the entire organization like a czar? What's the right fit for Caleb Williams, who needs a teacher, a motivator, a confidence builder, a schemer as a head coach? What's the right fit for Ryan Poles, who's sitting there going, wait, what happened? I used to be there was a direct conduit to ownership. Now I have to go through Kevin Warren. I feel like I'm a little bit in the purgatory here, but I want to be able to have a connection with the head coach. That's a lot to talk about the Chicago Bears, and that has to worry, I think, Ben Johnson or really any other candidate.
Boy, that's messy. That just like you explaining that for the last 45 seconds was like, who would want that job? And I keep saying that, and everybody's like, well, Caleb Williams, people want to coach him, but there's so much more in play there. There's a reason this franchise hasn't won a Super Bowl since 1985. There's a reason they haven't won a playoff game since 2010. There's there honestly is a reason they've never had a 4,000-yard passer. Like, there's things that have happened with the Chicago Bears over the past few decades that they're low key one of those Jets, Jaguars, Fitz, Raiders type of organizations that just never, ever gets it right. And there's a reason for it. It's not just bad luck. Like, Charles, wasn't Kevin Warren brought on to basically be the stadium guy? Like, we got to figure out the stadium mess. Right. Help us out, Kevin Warren. And all of a sudden you look up and he's been there, and now all of a sudden he's picking who the head coach is going to be. Like, what? Like, it's so sloppy with the Bears, and the on-field product reflects that.
Coming off the first overall pick, again, I have a lot of first overall pick in my brain. I admit that. But the Bears just picked first overall in the draft. When's the last time a team picked first overall in the draft and then all of a sudden, bam, everything turned around? All of a sudden, they became a world beater of a team. You could say Burrow obviously has changed the fortunes of the Bengals. I'll buy into that. It took a couple of years and a couple of big draft picks, and we see where the Bengals are today. They're still trying to screw it up. But when you look at, like, you got to go back to a first overall pick that actually contributed to a Super Bowl in any way, shape, or form. What is that? Eric Fisher with the Chiefs? And Eric Fisher wasn't a widely lauded
horrible draft.
Right.
Yeah.
That was. Yeah. I just continue to look at it and just remind everybody: if your team, usually I thought it was going to be the Raiders, is picking first overall, guess what? Your entire organization is a dumpster fire, and no one player is going to save that. No one player can actually save a dumpster fire. It takes such radical. I keep thinking about the fact that the Bears are, to use the overused quote, the Bears are who we thought they were, right? Like, and we all wanted the Bears to be better this year. We all thought, wow, they had $100 million in free agency plus. So again, all of the, oh man, my team's got over $100 million to spend on free agency. Well, let's remind everybody right now that players available in free agency for the most part are usually available for a reason. So that money's probably not well spent. And then it's going to be, but we've got the first overall pick. Well, you got the first overall pick because you've been bad at drafting enough years that you got the first overall pick. So why are you suddenly going to use it? I don't want to be like Debbie Downer here right after Christmas, but if your team's picking first overall, everything's gone wrong. And I don't think that you suddenly change that in one offseason.
If I may, too, whoever comes in next as a head coach, if it's not a seasoned play caller and game manager, good God, please get them classes. Please get them work. Because this is the final minutes of to let 45 seconds rattle off in the last, 2:11, 2:15, whatever it was, to let another 38 seconds rattle off. Now, granted, I know Caleb Williams was hurt at the point that the 38 second mark happens. But again, just
you send the punt team on, and then you have to call timeout because you changed your mind.
Because you changed your mind,
right?
Oh,
come on! What are we doing here?
Yeah,
that was a bad football. My goodness, that was a bad football game. Just a bad football game.
Do we have any big thoughts on the Seahawks in this? That's where we punted.
It's a Geno question, right? Like, I think if you're watching that team, you really have to say, do we just run it back with Geno? Because I don't know if he could take us where we need to go. Like, it's just been so up and down with the Seahawks all year. It's not like they don't have talent. They have flaws for sure.
Their offensive line is a flaw. Like the offensive line.
As you said it, like we sit here every week on Sunday night. We're like, I think the Seahawks are good. And then next week it's like, I think Seahawks are bad. And the next week I think Seahawks are good. And that just reflects a kind of a bad football team. When you're that up and down, you're not a very good football team. You have no consistency. They're just really, really lucky they played an even worse team last night.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question. Like, to me, no offense to Zach Charbonnet. I still think when Kenneth Walker is healthy, to me, that is and they're dedicated to running the football with Kenneth Walker. They look to me like a much more structured, seamless team on offense. I'm not saying they're totally seamless, but look, Geno has his limitations. As you said, the offensive line has, for what you have invested in it, still has not really come together the way that you had hoped. I think defensively they're going to be fine. They're going in the direction of Mike McDonald, and that doesn't worry me. But this is going to be an off season where Geno needs to be investigated as an option moving forward. And at what point do you start to look for another avenue at quarterback? It's not going to be a great offseason.
Right, and that's the thing.
Is Geno?
Who's your starter on week 1? Right.
I'll ask you directly. See, Rob, is Geno Smith the starter of the Seattle Seahawks week 1 next year?
I think he is, just because I just don't see a plethora of, like, Kirk Cousins, right, is going to come available. Okay, that's one guy.
I'd rather have Geno than Kirk.
Yeah, that's not an upgrade. Yeah, it's not an upgrade over Kirk, over Geno in that situation. If anything, it's a wash. Let's say Russell Wilson. Boy, he's in the middle of a critical 3-game stretch right now. Like, he just came out of one that did not fare well for him. I think there's a possibility Russell Wilson, once again, is a free agent in March. Is that an upgrade over Geno? No. And by the way, he can't go back to Seattle.
Yeah,
there's no way Russ can't go back.
Like, I was just thinking that when you were talking about that.
Yeah, like, you can't bring that up. So
Aaron Rodgers, like, is Aaron Rodgers better than Geno right now? I mean, I guess.
Daniel Jones?
No.
Do these sound enticing? Do these sound like fixes? We're basically talking about bridges. Every single one of these players were like, oh, that's a bridge quarterback. Well, you have your own bridge quarterback. He knows the offense. He knows the
you might
personnel.
As well just stick with what you got. And
you know the guy limitations.
Who has had. Look, Geno has played well at times this year. Like, Geno, like, he's like he's not Jameis. I don't want to do that to him. But there are, like, if you just cut up 90% of Jameis's season, it's pretty good. And then there's 10% where, like, Geno, come on. Like, what are we doing here? And last night was just awful. I don't know if it was conditions, whatever. But
conditions weren't great. Let's be real.
Great, but they were that bad that you're scoring 6 points against that Bears defense that had basically quit the previous 3 weeks. Like, it just looked bad. But I guess when you start going through the realistic options, who's better than Geno right now? Who can play at a very high level for an extended period of time? I think he's just one of those good enough quarterbacks. Like, he's good enough to get you to 9 wins, maybe. Like, he's never going to be that guy who gets you to 12. Like, and that's ultimately what you want. And I just don't think it's there with him. But he's good enough that you're not going to bottom out. You're not going to go 4-13 with him or anything. But it's just kind of, I guess, Geno. Like, I don't think anybody in Seattle is really going to be excited for Geno Smith to be coming back next year.
It's just a bad year to need a quarterback, which leads us to Sam Darnold. What to do with Sam Darnold? We're not going to yell about it. We're not going to scream about it. We're going to give you actual, well thought out information about it. We're going to do that after we take a quick break.
Introducing Daily Draw, the latest free-to-play game from Yahoo Sports. Daily Draw gives you a pack of 6 prediction cards every day based on the day's biggest sporting event. Download or update the Yahoo Sports app on the Apple App Store or Google Play and join the action with Daily Draw today.
All right, this is where we get to go full first take, guys, and just yell at each other. I thought about this. The minute I saw Sam Darnold in the prep for the show, I just kept thinking, this is where everybody wants to yell and scream. And I don't want to do that. I want to, what
if I want to yell and scream? I haven't yelled it's Christmas. I haven't been able to yell and scream all week. I want to yell at Charles. Like,
you two haven't had a good argument yet. So we'll see where this goes. I've said I think it was last week, I said, C-Rob, that if I'm the Vikings, I'm going to franchise Sam Darnold. I'm going to make him stay, even though he doesn't want to stay. even though I have J.J. McCarthy. I don't understand. Tell me how I'm wrong here. I don't understand how the Vikings can let Sam Darnold walk out the door no matter what they think they might have in J.J. McCarthy until they actually see J.J. McCarthy on the field.
Do you actually think he doesn't want to stay? Is that what you're saying? Sam Darnold doesn't want to stay in Minnesota?
Well, I think that he probably, look, we always hear that players aren't in love with the concept of being franchised. I mean, like, there's somebody out there that's going to give Sam Darnold massive money on a 3-year deal, no?
Yep. We just talked about all those options, right?
Listen, being
Sam Darnold
franchise
looks like the homecoming queen compared to that.
Well, and that's, people are probably listening to the Seattle conversation like, well, why aren't you bringing up Sam Darnold? And I think the reason I'm not bringing up Sam Darnold is as we move along, start to talk to people. Like, having been with the Vikings in the offseason, going through the process of talking to them about McCarthy and Sam Darnold, when you start to reach out to people in the league, people who have a lot of depth of knowledge of all the players involved there in Minnesota, meaning a depth of knowledge with Kevin O'Connell, the head coach, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, the general manager, Sam Darnold, the quarterback, and you say, where is this going? More and more, I think there is an agreement that they probably run it back with this crew being Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy in 2025. The success has reached a level where you start to lose some sensibility letting Sam Darnold go. Now, there's still games to be played, right? There's still the remainder of the season. There's still the playoffs, and I do think the playoffs matter. I think if the Vikings get into the playoffs, they face a quality team, and Sam Darnold throws 3 interceptions and just looks like garbage, and then all of a sudden, do I think that factors into things moving forward? Somewhat, yes. Not entirely, because it's a one-game scenario, but certainly I think there would be some new data on the table to crunch. But right now, the way that Sam Darnold's playing, the fit that he has with Kevin O'Connell, who, by the way, loves coaching him, the fit that he has with the offensive skill position pieces around him, the feel that he has for the scheme that is only going to improve going into year 2 with the Vikings, I think the Vikings absolutely are headed in the direction where either he gets franchised, which I think is probably the more likely scenario, or he's allowed to, hey, go ahead, go out there, look in free agency, we'll see what's available to you, and then come back to us because we think there's something we can put on the table for both sides that makes a lot of sense. And I think everyone's talking about the Vikings, sort of angle on this, which makes sense because they hold all the cards. They hold the franchise tag. They're the ones that can decide whether they let him test free agency or not. But you really should look at it from Sam Darnold's perspective as well. If he leaves, he threatens what is the apex of his career. He has reached a point with a coach, with an offense, with surrounding skill position players, where he can look at his career and go, could I be here 10 years? Yeah, I could. With this coach, with these skill position players, they probably won't all be there 10 years, but the beginning element of it, where we're at now, I could be here for the next 10 years of my career. Don't think in terms of one contract. Think in terms of 3 contracts. Don't think in terms of a 4-year deal. Think in terms of 3 4-year deals. That's what Sam Darnold has to look at right now. And if it's the Raiders coming to the table, go ahead and think about that. Could you be a 1 contract player with the Raiders? Yeah. Could you be Kirk Cousins leaving and going to Atlanta and all of a sudden, you know what? The carriage turns into a pumpkin. And next thing you know, great. You got $90 million for 14 starts, but people are looking at you like, nah, you are what you are. It's a different age. There's a different health standard there with Kirk Cousins. I get it. It's not a 1-for-1 comparison. But the point is, Sam Darnold's career, for the most part, has been completely wrong up until this point. Sam Darnold has to decide, if it's right now, how much do I have to consider keeping it right to look at the remainder of my career and not just the next contract? Next contract's enticing, but where am I going to be? Not in 2025, but where am I going to be in 2029, 2032? That's what this really should be about for Sam Darnold. And I think that's maybe where you get that interesting middle zone where the Vikings might say to him, yeah, you can probably go out there and get $50 million. Go ahead. The Raiders want to pay you $50 million AAV. What if we give you 45? and you come back and we give you $90 million guaranteed in the first 2 years, but we give you a 4-year deal, $180 million, $90 million guaranteed in the first 2. How about we put this together? Because we have a Super Bowl window right now with you. Come exercise the Super Bowl window now, grow with Kevin O'Connell, and realize the next 10 years of your career instead of the next couple.
But doesn't the next question for Sam Darnold have to be, and I'll ask you this too, are you willing to punt J.J. McCarthy? Are you willing to just, like, if you say, like, let's say he comes back on a 4-year deal, right? That's J.J. McCarthy's entire rookie deal. Are you willing to just say, yeah, we found our guy. We played the game. It was unconventional, but we found our quarterback, and that's the only goal is just to find the guy. And we're going to have a guy who finishes 6th in the MVP voting, and that's pretty darn good. And we're just, hey, this is weird too, but we're never going to get a game out of J.J. McCarthy. We're going to trade him for a 3rd-round pick, whatever it is. Like, I don't know. Are the Vikings
Why can't it be Jordan Love?
Think?
Why can't it be Jordan Love here?
Could be.
Well,
but I think that's different because Aaron Rodgers was at the later stages of his career. Like Charles talked about, like multiple 4-year deals or whatever. We're talking about a guy who's Sam Darnold's 27, I believe, which is kind of crazy. So you're talking
if it works, Frank. If it works. Now, if it works, it worked. Why are you going to change out? What are you going to do? You're sitting there playing poker and you're going, you know what? I got pocket kings, but let me go ahead and fold this hand because I'm going to wait for pocket aces.
What
the hell?
I totally get it. I totally get it.
Right? I mean, if it works, it works. And again, here's the thing. I think when you talk to other executives in the league and you start to sort of dial in on what Sam Darnold's contract's going to look like, there's a lot of doubt about him getting guaranteed money past 2 years because teams look at him and they go, Justin Jefferson's not coming, right? Yeah. Jordan Addis is not coming, right? Kevin O'Connell, TJ Hawkins is not coming, right?
I get that.
Maybe that scheme isn't what we run, right? So we're taking a gamble here too. He's taking a gamble going somewhere else, maybe just for the money. We're taking a gamble here, not having all these pieces. And then if he comes in and he's not that guy, what are we going to do? We're going to sit there and pretend like we're surprised that, oh, geez, all the great elite level pieces around him did not help the situation in Minnesota in 2024. So I think for the Vikings, it is 4-year deal, 2 years guaranteed. If it doesn't work out after 2 years, then you have McCarthy who sat there and gotten 3 years of experience, really 2, right? Because an entire rookie season has been lost to the torn meniscus. It's not like McCarthy's been out there running scout team. It's not like he's been out there practicing. Mentally, he's gotten a year of reps under his belt, but really physically, he's only going to get 2 years of reps going through the first 3 years of his career. So at that point, it becomes a Green Bay Packers situation where it's like, okay, he's had, a year of mental reps, 2 years of physical running the scout team, maybe in times, we insert him in mop-up duty. He's had some preseason games. He looks great. We're ready to make this transition. Sam, it didn't really ultimately go where we thought it would. He got his $90 million guaranteed over the first 2 years. Now we shift gears and we go to J.J. McCarthy. There's precedent for this that has happened in the past. And it wasn't just Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't just Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't, go all the way back. I remember I started this job 20 years ago. I remember going to San Diego and sitting in A.J. Smith's office, may he rest in peace with the San Diego Chargers, and saying, what are you going to do? You drafted Eli Manning, you trade him for Phillip Rivers on draft day. Now you got Phillip Rivers here, his 1st-round pick, 4th overall pick. And Drew Brees is keeping him on the bench for 2 years. Drew Brees kept Phillip Rivers on the bench because he played well. That to me is the scenario that I think the Vikings ultimately are looking at. And you give yourself options. And by the way, J.J. McCarthy doesn't become worthless. He's still worth something. So if Sam Darnold works out, you can't tell me that if J.J. McCarthy balls out in preseason games, balls out in the opportunities that he gets. And by the way, if the Vikings have, say, I don't know, an OC who goes somewhere and gets a head coaching job, he's going to go, hey, maybe send me JJ. Maybe go ahead and let me do that.
I mean, look, not too long ago, Josh Rosen put absolute trash on film his rookie year, and the Dolphins still gave up a 2nd-round pick for him. Like, it was McCarthy still has this unknown of maybe he's awesome. Like that, the unknown it can kind of be a drug to some people. Like, oh, maybe JJ's great. He's had this one preseason game, so he definitely does have value. I will ask this: I don't think there's any chance the Vikings don't franchise him. If this, obviously, they're going to negotiate, try to get something. there's no chance that he just hits the open market, right? Like,
you think they tag and trade no matter what?
Whatever. The franchise tag just gives you options at that point.
Sure.
Like, we'll figure it out later, but we're not just letting you hit free agency, right? Like, there's, at least that for me looking at the situation, I don't see how the Vikings wouldn't use a franchise tag.
The only way you wouldn't is because you have to lock up that money, right? You're sitting there and going,
stinks,
okay, that's $40 million. We have to lock up, means we don't have that available to us in free agency. Right. So you're like, all right, well, if this drags out and if you're locking up the money and you're not intending to keep him, then it's a little bit of a gamble because you don't know how long it will take to construct a trade with another team. And all that time you're sitting there going, okay, we can't really be active in free agency. Yeah, okay, we've got other contracts inside the team that we want to extend. That money will still be here later once we deal Sam and it frees up. But yeah, I mean, it locks up the money, and that's what you're probably nervous about if you're the Vikings. But I do personally, the level he's playing at, yeah, I'd make a team pay at this point to come and get him beyond just the contract.
The worst case scenario for Sam Darnold, and you talked about the playoffs are going to matter, whatever, but you look at this realistically. The worst case scenario for Sam Darnold is they finished this regular season 13-4 with a first round exit with losses in a row to the Packers, Lions, and Rams, let's say. I don't see any way the bottom falling out. He's had an unbelievable season. You as a team have had an unbelievable season. You might end up being the first seed in the NFC. You might end up winning a Super Bowl. Like, if the NFC has to go through Minnesota, why can't they win a Super Bowl? Right? They're that good. And I just can't see them turning back from, at least to just say, you know what, who cares? It was kind of unconventional to begin with. Let's just franchise you and figure it out. But you're right about the money. It does, but it is a quarterback position.
I think they might have Brian Flores back too next year. Like, I think there's a very, very good chance that Brian Flores. So you're not just running it back in terms of
you're running
Sam
the whole
Darnold,
thing back.
Offensive. Yeah, you're running the whole thing back.
And why wouldn't you? Like, they're awesome. Like, they're great.
And it's a great running back draft, by the way. Like, you can go and add a piece for him in the backfield that can improve this team. It can still get better. They are right now. They're sitting on a hell of a hand. They just have to figure out how to play it.
Yeah. See, Rob, you make an important point too. Somebody told me years ago, never spend a rich man's money. And it's so often that we turn around and we say, well, this is what this guy should do depending on how much money they have in the bank. One thing we have to remember, I Googled it, is Sam Darnold's career earnings, according to Over the Cap right now, is $65 million. Wow. So as it sits today, my guy's made $65 million to be thrown into all of these conversations as a bad quarterback, right? He's in a spot now where he's playing really well. And as much as we sit here and say, my God, I mean, this is his chance to go get paid. Like, he's going to go get that big old bag. He's already got $65 million. Like, his kids never have to worry about anything monetarily. So you never know what motivates somebody. We have no idea right now. If you're Sam Darnold, being in the right situation might matter a heck of a lot more than money. It doesn't have to for everybody, but I just think it is one of those things that we can't just presume that Sam Darnold is going to be looking for a 4-year massive deal from the Raiders when, to your point, C-Rob, he's already got generational wealth, and he may get more generational wealth even in a 2-year deal where we just don't know. We don't know what the motivator is.
But here's the deal. Like, it's not just the money, though. Like, the way Charles talked about setting up the contract is very smart from a team aspect. If I'm Sam Darnold, I'm sitting there saying, all right, if you pay me a little bit less and front load this thing, you're just setting me up so J.J. McCarthy takes over in year 4. I don't want that. I want to be the dude somewhere for the next 10 years because I've been, as you said, Fitz, he has been denigrated his whole career. Oh, you stink. You're a bust. And he's probably sitting there saying, I always knew I could play at this level because we know guys have confidence that way. And he's sitting there saying, I'm not taking some front-loaded basically 2-year deal because that just sets
Unless
me up.
he's turning around saying, I'm going to take this 2-year deal and I'm going to kick ass through the entirety of the 2 years. I'm keeping him on the bench now. I'm going to keep him on the bench next year. I'm going to keep him on the bench the year after.
Guys, let me play that leverage out though here for a second. If I'm the Vikings, let's go down the dark path for a second.
The dark.
Okay? Yeah, let's go down the dark path.
This sounds fun.
No, yeah. If I'm going to be an asshole, let me go.
You play that role so well. So
let me be that. Yes. Let me play that role for the Vikings for a second here. I'm going to say to Sam Darnold, I'm going to go, okay. All right, we're going to tag you and we're going to trade you. Where do you want to go? And I'm going to play hardball. Sam, live with it, deal with it. That's how ultimately this is going to go. Or if I'm going to be an asshole and say, go ahead, test your market, and then come back and we'll see if we can work something out. Where are you going to go, Sam? You going to go to the Raiders? Oh, okay. You want to go to the Raiders? You're going to make Mark Davis is going to throw some money at you and awesome. You're going to be the hope there. Who are you going to throw to other than Brock Bowers? Trey Tucker? Yeah, Trey Tucker, really? Trey Tucker probably be fourth best option for you right now in Minnesota, if that, fourth best option. Like maybe Naylor even is a better player than Trey Tucker with more balls thrown to him.
I get this, but Charles, there's so many teams. Like, can't you talk yourself into, well, Seattle's not that bad,
Frank,
Vikings.
it's two teams. No,
the Jets have talent.
It's two teams. If the Rams come calling, if Matt Stafford checks out and the Rams come calling, boom, go. Cool. You got the coach. There's awesome pieces. You got depth in the backfield. Kyron Williams, Blake Corum. You got Puka Nakua. Who the hell knows ultimately what you got? Sean McVay, right? Absolutely. Go to the Rams. Great. Front office has made hay with late picks and gotten some talent in the latter rounds. Now they've got first round picks to play with. Absolutely. Go to the Rams. If the 49ers come calling, you've been there. You've been there. You know what it's like to deal with Shanahan. Shanahan loved you while you were there. Fine. They're like, you know what? We're not doing this, Brock Purdy. The limitations are what they are. We actually like Sam and the tools that he brought to the table. We want to bring him back. Fine. If those are the two situations that you have on the table for you, absolutely blow Minnesota off. I think we are underplaying how attractive it is to remain in Minnesota. If I'm J.J. McCarthy, I'm like, dude, this is sweet. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm great. I'm learning the playbook right now. This is awesome. I have the best wide receiver look, it's him and it's Jefferson, Jamar Chase, right? Like, I
played
have
on the same college team, by the way, which is absolutely insane.
Wait. But what about the Raiders get Ben Johnson as their head coach? All right. And then they draft Travis Hunter because everybody goes quarterback at the top of the draft. Now you got Travis Hunter, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, Sam Darnold in with Ben Johnson. Come on, C-Rob, let me have some hope.
Travis Hunter. Tell me he's going to play wide receiver, and then we can have that conversation. I don't think that's going to happen. He's going to play corner and some wide receiver. I'm sorry, you can't like Travis Hunter. You can sell me as, hey, he's going to be a great player for us. He's going to be a great corner for us. You can't sell me on he's going to be a great corner and a great wide receiver for us. He cannot play, maximum snaps both ways, all the way in the NFL. He will get hurt. You will break him on the NFL level at some point if you do that to him. Now, if you tell me, hey, Travis Hunter's coming out, he's going to be a wide receiver, I'm all in. I think, to me, even over at Arizona, I look at Travis Hunter and I'm like, he might be wide receiver one if he just says that's all I'm going to do in this draft. Then if the Raiders are drafting, I'm like, okay, you got some. If Ben Johnson goes in, and man, that's a lot of moving parts.
It works. A heck of an offseason already, Fitz. You're doing well. Right. You hired Ben Johnson.
In Minnesota, it works.
Hunter.
It works. It works in Minnesota right now. The pieces are in Minnesota right now.
Do you think there's Charles? Do you think there's anything to be said about Sam Darnold not wanting J.J. McCarthy over his shoulder? Because he always will be. That's never not going to be a deal.
Absolutely, 100%. And maybe you say, if you're Sam Darnold, you go, hey, look, I went out in free agency. Here are the deals on the table for me. I can go get 50 plus AAV.
And I think
I can go
easily. I think he could with the dearth of quarterback.
Sure,
why wouldn't
absolutely.
he be able to?
I can get that. I can get 100 million guaranteed. Here's all the things I want to come back here. I think there's a space for us to work out something between us, but I don't want to be sitting here and be worrying about JJ McCarthy just waiting in the wings to take over, or the fan base. I have a bad game and the fan base is like, well, now JJ's healthy. Yeah, or JJ goes out and smokes it in preseason like he did last year.
Which people are forgetting. Good.
Yeah,
look at that game. He was fantastic.
Unbelievable in the preseason. And yeah, you don't want that. So maybe that's the leverage play. If you're Sam Darnold, you're like, yeah, I'll come back. But can we figure out a way to move off of JJ McCarthy? And here's this ideal backup and support that we could bring in. So we have the quarterback. And honestly, it's not a dickhead move on his part to do that. It's tactical. You're being smart.
Right. Because there's never not going to be that thing. If he comes back to Minnesota, they don't trade
That is
JJ.
the complication. That's fair.
For 4 years. You're right. Yeah. Every time he has a bad, I wouldn't even say one bad game, but he had a bad 2-game stretch
it's Kirk
in the middle
and
of
Penix.
the season.
It's Kirk.
Exactly.
It's Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix.
I don't know that if I'm Sam Darnold, again, I think money matters, but I think more than that, just the respect that comes with the money. Because these guys we all talk about it. Like, oh, why do you need any more money? Isn't $45 million enough? A lot of the money is status, right? And I think for a guy, and playing psychologist is a bad idea. I get that. But if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm thinking, I've been kicked around my whole career. Now all of a sudden I got the leverage here. I'm playing the cards. I'm getting this respect in the free agent market. Do I want to go back to a situation where, again, like you said, I'm Kirk Cousins and I have Michael Penix behind me, and every time you struggle, it's going to be, well, are you going to make a change? Kevin, is this the week? Are you going to go to JJ? I just don't know that I'd want to deal with that if I'm Sam Darnold, because I get it. It's a great situation, but is that situation so great when you have JJ McCarthy as your backup? I don't know.
If you're honest how NFL fandom works, that's exactly how it works, right? Like I mean, Kirk, it's the couple bad games. Oh my God. Here we go again. Oh my gosh, this is a guy. He showed up again. Like Sam Darnold's gonna be the same thing. Have a couple bad games. Oh my God, we paid him money. Sam Darnold, Jets Darnold again. Oh my God, Carolina Darnold again. Oh, ESPN showing Carolina Darnold film. Oh my God, what are we doing? Let's get to JJ McCarthy. It's exactly what would happen. It's exactly what happened in Atlanta, except sometimes. And I think in Atlanta it might end up being the reality. Sometimes it's the right move, you know?
Oh yeah.
I mean, this has been Goldilocks, guys.
Like if you could front load a contract for Darnold, like you talked about, front load a team friendly-ish deal on because Sam Darnold wants to come back with Kevin O'Connell. You're sitting there saying this worked out perfectly for us. If Sam Darnold doesn't work out,
we have options.
Okay, we have some sunk cost, but who cares?
Yeah,
that's kind of just price of whatever. Yeah, also this is a very Viking-centric, Vikings-happy conversation we're having, and I'm not sure it's so happy for Sam Darnold, who's got to look over his shoulder the whole time, where he could go to Seattle, Cleveland, whatever. I like you to name a team where, yes, I get it's not the Kevin O'Connell, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkins, blah, 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 but you're the guy. You've been given the respect of, hey, no, we're not going to have JJ McCarthy behind you. We're not giving you a team-friendly deal. We're giving you $57 million a year because we want you to come here. Like, wouldn't that appeal to Sam Darnold? Not in a money way, but in a respect way. I don't know. I think it's just fascinating. All layers of this are incredibly interesting.
I think it's fascinating that we've seen truly Goldilocks in the bridge gap quarterbacks this year, because the Patriots drafted a quarterback and then had Jacoby Brissett for a little while, right? And then the Falcons went out and paid, obviously, Kirk Cousins. And now they've transitioned to Michael Penix. We've had three different bridge quarterback situations, and all
remember
three
the Broncos?
have played out.
Stiddy.
Oh, yeah,
Stiddy could be a good start. Jarrett Stidham could start.
Oh my God. All proof positive that there's no right way to handle any of this. Although I've now determined that I need the Vikings to go on a run, win the Super Bowl behind the arm of, obviously at this point, behind the arm of Sam Darnold, which will then elevate his profile. Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator of the Vikings, becomes the head coach of the Raiders. Bring Sam Darnold with him. I got it all figured out. It's done.
Maybe Ben Johnson could be his OC. We'll just bring everybody to Las Vegas.
It's perfect. All right. I figured that out. We'll try and figure out Aaron Rodgers after a quick break. Gentlemen, Aaron Rodgers talked about professionalism in his glorious quote this week. He's never not giving us something. You got to figure out what it means to be a professional. That's an important part of building culture. The last 2 weeks, we can really see who's on board moving forward and who's ready to get out. Is Aaron Rodgers even going to be around? I'm confused by the statement. I don't know. Is being a professional going to sit in the darkness while you do a bunch of hallucinogenic drugs? Because if that's the case, I want to be a professional every offseason. I don't know what to make any of this, C-Rob.
Well, I think if that coaching staff is in place, I think they want him to be around. And low key, people kind of look at how the offense has functioned the last couple of weeks. They're definitely pushing to get production out of him the last couple of weeks. And I think that's the coaching staff. I think they are pushing to see, maybe Aaron sets the all-time Jets passing record by the end of the season. Maybe we get Devontae Adams rolling. Maybe, Jeff Ulbrich is sitting there saying, hey, if I come back, let's keep A-Rod. Let's roll this back. We'll keep A-Rod into 2025 and see where this goes. And shoot, maybe some people take some pay cuts and we draft a young guy and blah, blah, blah. There's a grooming situation or a mentoring situation. I just think that there are elements inside the Jets building left over who are loyal to Robert Saleh. I think there are elements inside the Jets building who are still loyal to Joe Douglas. And I think that when Aaron Rodgers gets up there and he talks about, hey, okay, we got these last couple games here, and we're going to see who's a professional, and this is about the next couple weeks, your habits, how you practice, how you prepare. This is about building, this is about your culture, how you build a culture. When he says these things, right, whether he says them at the podium, whether he says them on the Pat McAfee show, there are people in that building who listen to this and go, okay, man, like really? Because you told us before, you told the world that, hey, the full squad minicamp, when everybody was here and it was mandatory, you told the world that it's just a glorified OTA. And I was at all the other OTAs. So really, it doesn't matter. No, Aaron, our opinion is it didn't matter to you. Sure. But it did matter to us. And it did matter to Joe. And it did matter to Robert. And you weren't here. And how you painted it afterward by saying, well, it's just a couple more OTA days is not the message we wanted sent to our young players, to our other players who looked at you for cues on how they were going to build the culture, how they were going to prepare. It's interesting because he continues to preach certain aspects of what he believes. And the people who get to know him in these organizations for the first time start to notice it's what fits what he wants at that time. It's what fits the narrative he wants it to be at that time. It's the world according to Aaron, the world according to us. And when those two things don't fit together, then what is it? How does it work then? And the funny thing is, he's right. Nobody in the building was disagreeing with how he was looking at the remainder of the two games. They agreed. Yeah, absolutely. We want guys showing up preparing. That we do want that kind of a culture where just because we're not in the playoffs doesn't mean you just cash it in and it's gone. You're already packing up your locker. But at the same time, there were things on the line in the preseason. There were things on the line in minicamp. It mattered to us then. And you decided, well, it's just an OTA when we did not see it that way. And yeah, it bothers us now on the back end. These people ultimately in the Jets organization might not matter at all when it comes to whether Aaron Rodgers is in the Jets organization in 2025 and beyond. But there continues to be consistency with Aaron Rodgers and how he messages things, how he frames them, where it just doesn't all fit together nice and neat. And there's a messiness to it. And as I called it, sort of a gerrymandering of how he sees a football team and the decisions it makes at any given time and how that ultimately serves him. The whole distractions element. He gerrymandered the whole idea of what is a distraction? Well, it's got to be outside the building, or it's got to be this, or it's got to be that. Okay, your whole Enigma series drops in the middle of December. Like that's not a distraction really at all, because now you're talking about your family, and in the Enigma series you're talking about past situations, past like teammates, teams, all how you're looking at football. Like, of course, that's all a distraction. I mean, it just I think that ultimately plays into 2025. If there's certain people in the building who I think get to weigh in on this. They're going to tell Woody, we need to move on from this, man. We need to reset.
And Woody's going to say, what's his Madden rating?
Yeah, Woody's and by the way, Rodgers talked about on the McAfee show, about potentially being released, but makes the joke about being released by a teenager. I'm like, okay, that's not a distraction. Like, you're basically kind of taking a poke at the owner and a story that's out there, but then also criticizing how the story got out there, but then also using it to make a joke.
Did you watch a Rodgers documentary?
I did.
Enigma? Yeah. How is it? I haven't seen it yet. I watch them all, so I probably will watch it, even though I'm not really excited to watch hours of Aaron Rodgers.
Look, I think it's interesting. He is definitely a very conflicted person that comes through very much in this. And there's a lot of it is rooted in how he grew up and his family. And the one thing that I think I got out of the documentary that I thought was most interesting was actually something that Sean McVay said, this past off season. I go through LA and you're talking to McVay. And one of the really interesting things that McVay said when he was talking about like philosophically, how he's gotten to a different place in his coaching career. McVay made this point of, I thought when you won a Super Bowl, that was it. It made you happy for the rest of your life. And he was like, and then I won the Super Bowl and I was like, hey, I'm not happy for the rest of my life. Like, what happened here? Like, that was the payoff. I won the lottery. It wasn't supposed to fix every other internal conflict that I had and just resolve me on the cellular soulful level. And it didn't. And I hear a lot of that from Rodgers in the documentary that I think is probably true, that he thought there were certain elements of football that were going to resolve some different conflicts in his mind about who he was as a person, what he wanted to be, what would make him happy. He feels like a person who wants to be happy, and football has not ultimately done that for him. I also think there's a lot of nuance and hypocrisy in the documentary.
No way.
And I think it bears the hallmarks of who he is and how he, sees himself, has been accurate and reflective of his.
It's really interesting
because,
he and Brett Favre are tied together. And I remember distinctly at the end of the Americas game, 1996 Packers, Brett Favre talks about almost the same thing. It's a different way because he's Brett and Aaron's Aaron, but Brett's like, he talks about getting to, they win the Super Bowl and they're in the locker room, and he kind of snuck away from Mike Holmgren's speech. It kind of was like, this is it. I won a Super Bowl and I expected it to be so much. And I was like, this is all there is to it. Like it was kind of very poignant in a strange way. So it's very interesting. Aaron had kind of the same thing to say.
Brett's
about
in it, by the way. There's some time.
Is he really? Okay.
Yeah, he and
I
Aaron.
really want to watch it. I do. By the way,
Aaron goes down to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and he sits basically. It looks like Brett's dining room table, and they talk about how Brett sort of treated him coming in and what that was like. And it's definitely an interesting watch. But again, it's not a documentary, right? It's docutainment, and it's the same as The Last Dance. Sure, yeah. It's the same as all the things Brady
Man
did.
In the arena.
It's athletes that are taking the opportunity to shape the narrative about themselves through their own eyes, which is fine. But just understand that this is, it's like when I watched the 30 for 30 on Lance Armstrong, right? And the whole time you're watching it, you're like, okay, this is a patch up, right, of his reputation. That's what this ultimately is. And when you get to the end of it, you're like, yeah, okay, he took some bumps and bruises in it, but it was largely very much a lot of it was sort of patch up. It was just very keen how they did it. It was very smart. It was very how he tried to navigate it. All these docutainment series are that way, and I think this fits it. It's good entertainment, though. I would watch it.
I'll just say this quickly before we move on. Like, as somebody that has no relationship with anybody in my family personally, I understand a lot of what Aaron Rodgers goes through in that situation. Also, as somebody that, frankly, for me in my previous life in music, reached a pinnacle, and I was like, I spent my whole life working for this, and I accomplished it, and it does not feed my soul. I understand part of that portion of Aaron. There's a lot of Aaron Rodgers I understand. But even I can admit that if you sat down and talked to my family and me, you would probably get two very different perceptions of the same life. And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. That's the one thing for me with Aaron that I am lucky enough to know some of the guys in his family that I'm close with and I'm friends with. And I would just say that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle for all of it. I get it. I just don't get even for me, and y'all have known me for a couple years now, I have never once come out and played the victim for the life that I have led. And the thing that will always bother me is that I don't like it when somebody comes out and says, oh my God, this is like, woe is me. I can't believe I'm not getting understand I understand Aaron Rodgers' path more than a lot of people because there are some similarities. I don't understand Aaron Rodgers' constant victimization in this process and constant yelling and screaming in this process. Like,
and there's a lot of
stuff.
There is very much there's a lot of the series that is, it's very, of course it's going to be Aaron centric, but it's very Aaron centric in terms of how the world has reflected off me and how it made me feel. And that's fine. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know that it's necessarily not trying to be that, but it is that. I will say the ayahuasca stuff and the retreats, and maybe I had a better appreciation for, we make fun of that. We make light of it. I really do think he's trying to do that stuff to reach something. I think that's actually real. I think it's not just weird or what, again, it's not weird. There's nothing weird about it. It's unfortunate because we joke about it, we generalize it, and it's actually meaningful to a lot of people. Dude, and I think that's what he's seeking. And okay, so I had an appreciation of that, but there is still the tinge of victimization where it's like, why does the media look at me like this? Why is the narrative this? Why is this? Da, da, da. If you really had a real, honest conversation about that with someone who's not just sitting there going, I'm going to agree with everything you say. If you sit down and actually have a real conversation where you hear the people who you feel are misrepresenting you, maybe he would have a better understanding. I don't know that he's really interested.
when you are at the pinnacle of whatever your life is and you fought so hard to get it and you don't feel joy from it, it's a very suffocating thing. And I live it. I live it all the time. Like, there are moments in life where people turn around and it's like, man, you fought your whole life to get this one accomplishment. And you play, like for me, it was playing certain shows or for certain venues and then certain TV things, getting a Grammy. And you're like, man, I don't know, like, what's next? That didn't work. What's next? And so I understand the entire retreat process. In fact, I've thought about doing it myself. Like, I think when you can't find the same level of cellular joy out of accomplishment that people think you should, then you start to look in the mirror and you're like, man, am I broken? Like, why am I not finding this level? Like, I think that's really real in all of this. But the other part of it is the important part. See, Rob, what you said, like, if I've done something that rubs the room wrong or rubs my friends wrong, one thing that I've always done as a person is sat down and said, hey, why? Like, what did I do there and how can I learn from it? That's, I think, the frustrating part for me with Aaron Rodgers is that he's smart enough to know what he's doing. And
he can get there.
No,
he got there. He admits he got there with the Favre thing, which when I saw that happen, I was like, he can get there. He can see the experience from someone else's eyes because he admits that there's a series there. There's like a chunk of it where it goes through the Jordan Love drafting. And at one point he says, okay, now I can see this from Brett Favre's vantage when it happened to him, because now it's happening to me. And so now this experience, I am now in his shoes and I can understand now some of the things that happened between Brett and I'm paraphrasing here, but he's basically saying, I understand some of the things that happened between us early in my career with the Green Bay Packers. So I'm like, he can get there. He just got there. He got there with Brett. He got there with the Jordan Love situation and then his own drafting when Brett was the quarter. He can get there with people. The thing is, does he want to? Does he want to with everyone? No, I mean, I think he wants to with some people, and he also admits in the series, he says he is sensitive. And I do think that is one of the things that probably creates this barrier between him and his critics. Whatever. We're having a whole theological conversation about Aaron Rodgers. When the bottom line is, he going to be there in 2025? This is a lot of drama. And okay. And I think there are going to be people in the organization who go, new coach, new general manager, let's spin this forward in a realistic way and move on from this. There's just too much drama and maybe Aaron wants to come back. Who knows what those motivations are in terms of why he wants to come back, but really, is it best for our organization? Maybe not. And whether Aaron's there or the coach, the GM, whatever, it's still Woody. So does anything really ever change for the Jets? We'll see.
On that note, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. If you've listened this far, rate, review, subscribe. Go check out all of C-Rob's thoughts, obviously, in the quarterback room on Yahoo Sports. He's got some great stuff out there that we didn't have time to get to because, we got talking deep stuff. Emmy doing God's work behind the scenes, making this show sound great and bleeping out all of our cuss words. Also, follow us on social media at Charles Robinson, at Yahoo Schwab, at Jason Fitz. You know where to find us. Sunday night, Frank and I will be back after a riveting Sunday of terrible. I'm just going to be honest. The game sucked this weekend, but we're still going to react to every single one of them. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Tell your friends, family, and enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us every single episode. We appreciate you.